Good afternoon, folks. Welcome back. Today, we will look at the history of the KMS Nurnberg, later renamed to the Russian cruiser Admiral Makarov, the first foreign ship to be featured on the channel. Now, before we get started, the gameplay will be featuring the Tier 5 premium Russian cruiser Makarov, because I do not own the Nurnberg. Nurnberg was a Leipzig-class light cruiser of the Kriegsmarine. She was armed with 9 150mm guns and 3 triple turrets, a single turret forward and a super-firing pair aft. She carried a secondary armament of 8 88mm dual-purpose guns and 2 twin mounts per side. The Nurnberg also had 12 21-inch torpedo tubes, with 2 triple mounts on either side. And finally, the AA armament comprised of 8 37mm guns and 8 20mm guns. The cruiser also carried a pair of catapult fighters. The ship was mostly unchanged while serving as Makarov with Russia. The cruiser weighed 9,040 metric tons with a length of 595 feet, a beam of 53 feet, and a draft of 18.8 feet. She was powered by 6 water tube boilers comprising of 2 steam turbines and 4 diesel engines. She drove 3 screws and can make a top speed of 32 knots. Nurnberg had a maximum range of 3,900 nautical miles at a speed of 10 knots. The cruiser was also poorly protected, with a maximum belt armor thickness of 2 inches, deck armor at 1.2 inches thick, and a maximum thickness of 3.9 inches on the conning tower. The Kriegsmarine ship Nurnberg was laid down in 1934 at the Deutsche Werk shipyard in Kiel. The exact date is unknown. She would be launched on December 6th of 1934. The cruiser was completed and commissioned less than a year later on November 2nd of 1935. A few months later, in April of 1936, Nurnberg would join Königsberg-class cruiser Köln and sister Leipzig for an Atlantic training cruise, Nurnberg being the flagship of the operation. Later that year, Nurnberg would participate in non-intervention patrols during the Spanish Civil War of 1936 through 1939. She did not see any action during the 4 patrols she conducted. However, the crew of Nurnberg claimed that they were attacked by an unidentified submarine in July of 1937. This report was never confirmed. 3 months later, in the month of September, Nurnberg participated in fleet maneuver naval exercises alongside the pocket battleships Graf Spee and Deutschland, later renamed to Admiral Scheer, alongside the cruisers Leipzig, Königsberg-class Karlsruhe, and a handful of destroyers. After spending January, February, and March of 1938 in the Baltic, Nurnberg would return to Germany for a dry docking and a minor refit, finishing at some point before June of that year. In August of 1938, the cruiser was a part of a fleet review presented to Adolf Hitler in Kiel. Her first action was conducted in March of 1939 to capture the city of Memel, Lithuania. Afterward, she would join Graf Spee, Leipzig, and Köln for a training cruise in the Mediterranean Sea. The cruiser then returned to the Baltic in May to conduct more training operations. At the start of the Second World War, on September 1st of 1939, the Nurnberg would sail for Poland to create a blockade and prevent the Polish Navy from escaping Axis hands into the Baltic Sea. However, several Polish vessels were able to escape, most famously the ORP Bliskowica. Just 2 days later, the cruiser was reassigned to the German coastline to lay a defensive minefield. After yet another training cruise in the Baltic, Nurnberg would escort destroyers in laying a minefield across the British coast in November of 1939. The following month, she would lay even more mines along Norway. Nurnberg would be damaged for the first time on December 13, 1939, when she was engaged by submarine HMS Salmon off the coast of UK. The submarine fired a spread of 2 torpedoes. Nurnberg was able to dodge one of them, but the second struck the bow of the ship. She had to reduce speed down to 12 knots in order to initiate repairs. Soon after, 3 further torpedo strikes would be spotted to port, causing the ship to accelerate to full speed and dodge all of the incoming torpedoes. Both vessels got away intact. The top speed of Nurnberg was now reduced to 18 knots as she made way to port for repairs. The next day, Nurnberg and Leipzig, which was also torpedoed, came under attack from the RAF, but both ships managed to dodge and evade the attacks from the 20 enemy bombers. The 2 sisters made it to Germany without any further damage. Nurnberg entered a dry docking and repair session which lasted until April of 1940. Nurnberg was reassigned to Norway in June of 1940 and saw no action during that entire month. On July 25th, Nurnberg would escort the damaged battleship Gneisenau from Norway to Kiel. The cruiser would spend most of the rest of the year in the Baltic, the only notable event during this time being another minor refit during the months of October and November. In February of 1941, Nurnberg was redesignated as a training cruiser, tasked with training U-boat crews. The cruiser would resume active duty in June of 1941 after the German declaration of war against the Soviet Union. The Kriegsmarine soon realized that the Soviet Navy had no intent of an offensive move. Nurnberg, as a result, would immediately return to training duties for the rest of the year. In January of 1942, Nurnberg received another refit, removing the aft torpedoes and the anti-aircraft battery would be increased. Also, the catapult fighter would be removed. During this year, a series of air raids left the ship out of service until August 23rd. After returning to service, Nurnberg was assigned to a task force centered around the battleship Tirpitz. On May 3rd of 1943, Nurnberg received a machinery overhaul and returned to training duties. The ship once again saw no action for the remainder of 1943 and all of 1944. The sudden lack of active duty was due to the Allied powers and their rapid destruction of Kriegsmarine assets. In early 1945, Nurnberg was only assigned to one mine-laying operation, with further operations being impossible due to fuel shortages. By the end of the war, only two Kriegsmarine warships remained, the Nurnberg and the Prinz Eugen. While the Eugen was given to the United States as a war prize, Nurnberg was given to the Soviet Union as a war prize. The ships were given as war prizes in order to prevent an event similar to the scuttling of the High Seas Fleet in 1919. The cruiser would begin her life as the Admiral Makarov at some point in 1946. In Russian service, the cruiser would be named the flagship of the 8th Fleet based in Tallinn in 1948. Her life as a flagship was short, however, with the arrival of the Chapayev-class light cruisers in the 50s. Makarov was removed from frontline duties and once again became a training cruiser in 1954. As a training cruiser, most of her AA was removed and new radars were installed. Due to Russian secrecy, the remainder of her life is unknown. It is clear, however, that she was retired by 1959 and scrapped by the 1960s. Nurnberg was the only Kriegsmarine warship to see any form of active service after the fall of Nazi Germany. There are two variants of this ship in the game, World of Warships Legends. You have the Nurnberg, the Tier 5 tech tree German cruiser in her pre-war configuration with 12 torpedoes and a catapult fighter. Also, shown here, is the Admiral Makarov, a Tier 5 premium Russian cruiser, showing the vessel in her late to post-war configuration. Both of these ships are quite similar, being the same vessel. The main differences being that Nurnberg has more torpedoes, a fighter, and the signature German sonar. Makarov, on the other hand, exchanges the German AP for Russian armor-piercing shells. Both ships have poor armor and are quite difficult to play well, even for more experienced players. I acquired the Makarov in a Christmas crate of December of 2021 and personally like her more than the Nurnberg, mostly because Makarov is quite a rare ship to see in matches, and that she has the Tier 5 premium boost. Unfortunately, the Nurnberg does not have that much history. I did as much research as I could, and this was all I could find. And the gameplay I have is quite long. So, I'm going to leave you guys to watch the rest, and I'll see you in the outro.
Прямо по курсу. Минут до конца боя.
if you're still here, thank you for watching. I will not be taking a ship request on this video, because due to certain circumstances, I have to do a North Carolina video as well, and I'll be taking a request on that one. After a heartbreaking loss, I really should have loaded HE there, we come to the bittersweet end of the match. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.